the Fed recognizes that they may need to start pulling back support for the economy a little bit sooner than they expected. And they cited stronger than expected growth this year, which is obvious. And I think this is more evidence that they're using like backwards facing data, because it just seems like every time they have a meeting, like they're catching up to what the market already sees, because the market's trying to look forward. And it looks like the Fed might just be using data that they only look at historical data. They don't try to extrapolate forward. They just strictly stick to what the historical data is telling them. But this kind of offers a sign that maybe within on the next meeting, July 27th and 28th, that we might see more formal deliberations, more actual kind of constructive conversation about when dates, of bond purchase, slowdowns might actually occur, when they actually kind of start pulling back on how much they're spending in the economy. And they've acknowledged at the meeting too that even though they still believe in to some degree that this inflation is transitory, that that they understand that if consumers and businesses see elevated numbers for a long enough period of time, and they begin to see they begin to develop an expectation of inflation, it could become one of those self-fulfilling expectations where it might not actually be real, right? That we might actually be able to get through it, but then people see that, so they react in such a way that drives prices higher and pushes us into that reality, right? Self-fulfilling. People basically scare ourselves and then behave in such a way that forced it to happen anyway, even if it was or wasn't going to happen. And really, there's two major camps here that are kind of splitting up in the Fed. You're seeing people that are saying this is still necessary and this is all temporary inflation. It's all good. And then you're seeing people officials in the Fed that are kind of saying, well, actually these numbers are pretty high. Maybe we should start moving a little bit faster. And it appears that the maximum employment goal is the last thing standing in the way. So the Fed said they want to see inflation above 2%. They want to see sustained 2 to 2.5% inflation, and they want to see maximum employment. Those were the three criteria that really needed to happen for them to start scaling back on bond purchases. And it appears that with the inflation the way it is, those goals have probably been hit. So maximum employment is the final test to pass, and they're saying we're still not there yet. But out of the Dallas Federal Reserve, they said, listen, they argue that you can't judge the labor market based on the pre-pandemic labor market. You must use a neutral labor market. So what does that mean? I'm not an economist, so math wasn't. They didn't really talk a lot about the math, and I don't really understand it down to that level terribly. But what they really do is they look at employment as a natural employment pinned to the population, and then actual employment fluctuates around the natural employment line. And when you look at them overlaid with each other, and you see this, you actually see that both of the patterns are actually overlaying each other to within 3/10 of a degree of measurement there. So their argument is that there actually is full employment coming, and that we're averaging about 565,000 new jobs a month. So even though we currently just hit a record at 9.2 million job openings, what you're seeing when you look at that 9.2 million job openings and you compare that to the 9.3 Americans who were unemployed roughly back in May, you can see that it's like almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So based on these numbers, it shows that there's actually a much more stable labor market. So it really depends on how the Fed decides to look at the labor market. I found that as an interesting argument, because depending on what data you're using and how you're looking at it, you can make arguments for a different picture. And in that case, if you took the Dallas Fed's argument here that labor markets are actually a little bit tighter than we think they are, and we're getting closer to full employment, you could see that argument being a reason that they would start rolling back those bond purchases and that support earlier. And interest rates are still expected to be, 7 out of the 18 officials think that they'll raise interest rates next year. Most think that they will definitely do it through by 2023, at least 1 or 2 rates increases. So we definitely know interest rates are going to be going up over the next year or two, but the bond purchases are still a mystery because they're very vague, and they say we need to see, much more substantial progress in the labor market, which isn't really a very clear or precise measurement. They just say they haven't seen it yet. So we don't really know when that's going to happen, but I thought the Dallas Fed's argument was interesting, and I think over the next couple of months and few meetings, we might start seeing them shift into a more precise measurement of bond repurchase program weaning off for the market.